Hey, everybody. It's Judith-Kate Friedman here again. And this is our last live stream of the day celebrating the UK publication launch date of Daniel Deardorff's wonderful book, The Genius of Deformity in Myth, Culture, and Psyche, the main title being The Other Within. The Other Within, The Genius of Deformity in Myth, Culture, and Psyche. You can listen to different ones of this live stream from the first launch date, which was on the 8th of November in 2022. And then also other ones that we did just about 9 days ago here. And you can listen to those and find some really good different pieces of the book that we're talking about. And I see people dropping by and saying hello. Please do. Welcome to everybody. And we did some music in the last one of these. So you can look around in the archive because we're leaving all of them up online. And I think we'll start here. And then we'll talk about how this book came to be and what we're up to now, how I came to be in this position speaking on Daniel's behalf about this book. And the power of love, the power of story, the music within the words, the spaces in our lives that allow us to, even when it's shocking, to slow down and listen in new ways. This is a really poignant piece of the book where Daniel takes a poem, a very important poem by Robert Bly called A Godwit. It's a prose poem, and really takes a look at what's being said by Robert Bly in the poem. Robert was his great friend and mentor, teacher, and collaborating partner in the last 10 years of his life. And this poem really speaks to the strange life of an avian outsider, is how Daniel puts it. And it's really talking about the shape shifting that we can become aware of and we can notice, and maybe we can even emulate. And in this thinking about transformation, there's also the thinking about that deeper observation. I've been reading John Young's book, What the Robin Knows, and I've been thinking about that tradition of having a sit spot and moving like a deer or as a mouse, just so quietly in order to be able to hear everything undisturbed and let the living world start being connected to the same place they're connected to already, but with us slipping in without disturbing it so that we can find ourselves in the fabric of what is there without being an intruder. And it's a great art. Yeah, April, I'm so glad you're back. Yes, that book was gifted to me by Daniel. It was gifted to Daniel by Yusi, an old friend. So a shout out to everyone who is listening to the birds and knowing that we can learn from all the ones that are not human two-leggeds, that aren't even mammals, but also those mammals. So in this case, we're learning from a bird called the godwit, which is not such a large bird, although the images in this poem always make me think it's the size of a flamingo or something really big. I will now read Robert's poem in this part, and then give you a little bit of what Daniel has to say about it. And then in this good next 20 minutes or so, I'll also talk about what we have in store next and how we've been weaving things together all day and all year so far in the Mythsinger Legacy Project, celebrating the work of Daniel Deardorff and his vision, carrying forward his vision to restore the wisdom of myth to culture and community, and build community that is restoring the wisdom of myth. Can you hear me okay? Okay. You hearing me all right out there? I hear yay, wonderful, but I think that was from before. I guess I'll be louder, huh? Okay. One godwit, Robert Bly writes, not as plump as the others, stands balanced on one leg, the other drawn up. My breath pauses as I notice that the foot is missing, and in fact, the whole leg below the knee is gone. When he hops, his isolated knee bends like the other one. His single foot kicks a little sand away with each step. Feeding and hopping, he comes up near one of the plump ones, and with a swift motion, perfectly in rhythm, bites him in the ass. He then hops out of the flock and feeds alone. Daniel Deardorff writes of this. On Alexander's side of the Iron Gate, aka civilization, the survivor knows when to employ the self-assertive cunning to bite the ass and when to employ the forbearing grace to hop quickly out of the flock. The poet's breath pauses at the moment of recognition. 10,000 years of exile are caught in that suspended breath. Bly writes, it took me so long to notice that one bird was not a real member of the flock. The flock moves continually, striding or flying. Sometimes the flock strides away and leaves him, at other times, feeds around him. And Daniel Deardorff writes, the flock moving around the one-legged bird instills the strange dyslexic sensation of one's outer and inner realities in complete antipathy. This scene depicts with excruciating accuracy the affective experience of the other within. The crowd envelops you. You appear to be one of them. Maybe even let yourself pretend for a moment that you are. Then the bell rings or the light changes, they move off, and you are left alone and unchanged. Like a statue in the park, life moves around you. This is not sad. It is a matter of knowing one's ontic reality and how ridiculous it would be for a statue to abdicate its own being in favor of a longing to join the picnic or fly with the pigeons. And he talks about different figures in mythology after that, who are the counselor, but also the gesture and the fool, who subordinate in their position to the king, and yet who can say where the greater power lies. Something here is being hinted at regarding the old and quite offensive idea of knowing and keeping one's place. And yet it is only when that place of structural status is accepted as one's ontic reality, value, and identity that one becomes trapped into proving self-worth in the mirror of malicious eyes. This line from William Butler Yeats's poem, The Dialogue of Self and Soul, that we start confusing our own shape, the way we know ourselves, because we are looked at maliciously through others' eyes, and they are mirroring us in such a way that we feel we are becoming that shape, which is not our shape. If, however, Deardorff writes, one is informed by an identity and reality with a source and basis outside and independent of structure, then keeping place means that the socio-structural locus and the cosmoliminal locus overlap and permeate each other in the seat of the soul, at the crossroads of identity, the coincidentia oppositorum, the coincidence of opposites, that generative tension between the dualities where there is something other than just this and that, or neither nor. The mandorla makes a mystic revolutionary refuge or theater for the informance and performance of exactly who and what we are. And so There's one more piece of this that I want to read. I'm skipping ahead. I don't want to give you the whole chapter here. But this is the last chapter in the prelude section of The Other Within. And again, here's what the book looks like through inner traditions. We're so lucky that they've put out this third edition. He says, in the fervent intent of this book, he's seeking to prise open the impossibilities of confirmation outside the capricious and arbitrary castigations of structure, to circumvent the annihilation of the overwhelmed and fallen soul. I just want to pause and actually take that in. I've been reading this book all year out loud. I have narrated the audiobook, which will come out in 2023. And I've been living with and sort of ingesting and sipping and chewing on and drinking up so many of the different pieces of thought that are in here. Very beautifully woven. And yet, as several people have said, even today in our different conversations as we've celebrated the book all day, there's a wovenness that is like a labyrinth, or that is like an echo chamber, or that is like a deep dive into the I don't know what, but then you come around again and you start to recognize something, and that something you recognize may even be parts of yourself, parts of your circumstance, parts of history, parts of vision, imagination. And it is the all, it is the everything, it is the no thing, it is the stuff of life. And Martin Shaw and I were talking earlier today about how the way Martin put it is this book will long outlive us now. That this book is being birthed again into the world in this third edition, so it's not out of print. It will be alive for generations to come because it gives us so much healing and so much of what we need to be recontextualized in all that scattered, shattered strangeness that we each feel. So to wrap this up, he says, I just have to read this again. The intent, the fervent intent of this book, of this work, is to prise open the impossibilities of confirmation outside the capricious and arbitrary castigations of structure. Castigations, the shaming, right, that we might feel from various structures. To circumvent the annihilation, cunning and grace, the trickster wisdom, how to get away from annihilation of the overwhelmed and fallen soul, really to be redeemed as one who has agency to live despite the mirror of malicious eyes, despite castigation, despite structures that tamp down the overwhelmed. He comes back at the very end to say, the hierophany of betrayal and the gift in the wound breaks the heart open to disclose a deeper, invulnerable shape, not a structural but a separate, kaleidoscopic and primal shape, in which we find a place to stand strong in the poesis of the mandorla, the overlapping liminal place of the neither this nor that, between human beings and what shines. And all of this, knowing at once that in our extremity we actualize the true human condition, the secret promise of life. This is our bond, the sole perspective of communitas, the beauty and the power and the essence of being connected that often comes up in the midst of crisis, our deep and hidden membership. And this is what Bly says at the end of the Godwit poem. The flock rises once more and flies toward the sea where the packed sand shines. The bird with one leg rises with them, but turns in the air, his long wings tipping among the winds, and lands at his old place to feed alone. So we could weep there, maybe. Maybe we recognize ourselves as that bird that doesn't belong to the flock. And this book, which you can keep in your back pocket, so to speak, and just have as a companion, Audrey said earlier today, Audrey D. Mola, who's been wonderfully working with the Mythsinger project all year, that we can have a place, a nest, to come back to again and again that collects these 99 different thinkers and poets and these different strands of associativity that Daniel wove and that wove into him and that he then gave us in this very circling around thing so that we can keep seeing the various angles, the multivalence or multivalence of what it means to be human, what it means to be alive, what it means to be one part of the living world, what it means, as Nick Mather from Rebel Spirit Radio and I talked about on a podcast that will be released in January, to be animal, to be a human that knows that it's an animal. What does that mean? For us to be that humble, for us to be that real, and to me, that expansive, that accepted again into the idea that there's kin of all kinds everywhere. And yet, so many of us who were not raised in traditions close enough to the earth, close enough to the living world, kin of the not humans, the everyone else, including the living beings in the rocks and the trees and the plants and the everyone that talks. If we don't come from that, how do we find it again? How do we allow it to find us? And so, one of the things we have to look forward to in the larger picture next year is my own work in a project called The Unstoppable Stirring, which grew out of my studying Daniel's work and doing a master's dissertation project, which you can find. Maybe we can type that into the chat. Let's see, I'll put it right here if I can. It's called mandorlarising.net. And it's a gallery, it's an online gallery with poems, songs, and videos that grow from working with the other within, but also the passage of my own bereavement after Daniel's passing, after he flew out of this story and into the next on 9/19/19. And the next year, the pandemic began, and I decided to go to grad school and work with Martin Shaw and others, and got my degree, my master's degree at age 60. What a lovely gift that was to myself in poetics of imagination, to begin to weave all of these pieces of my own understandings. And so, how I come to be a steward of this work is very much in the mandorla of my work and my world and my wanting to write about the environment and extinction and the living world wanting to sing songs through me. And then this other overlapping piece, which is the realm of Daniel's work and his community, which included the men's work, which included rites of passage with youth, which included other things that I have not directly done. And now we have many of his recordings, story recordings. I just found a few more of them today because he kept many devices. So we keep retrieving the places where they've been tucked away and slowly getting them cleaned up, not so much edited as remastered. A lot of them are live recordings from around the fire or in presentations. And so making those available and then creating these hearth spaces, mostly online so far, where we really sit around the Zoom hearth. Instead of all those squares feeling separate, we have Daniel on film calling a fire, and we have the sense of us gathered together, and then we feed the story, and then we feed the storyteller, and we're really bonding and relating to each other in these ways that are ancient, that people have done around myth since the very beginning of anyone having language and telling tales. So I'm going to see if there's any questions in the chat and answer a few. I wonder, April, if you have anything that you'd like me to talk about. I see someone making a comment. I think that's Ashley saying education is never done. It's absolutely true. Sending love. Thank you. So, yeah, got a few people here wondering if there's anything that you'd like to know about. I'll say that if you are a subscriber to our YouTube channel, if you're not, please become one. But if you are, and or if you go to mythsingerlegacy.org and you sign up for our mailing list, then you will also be invited to our year-end solstice jam party thing, which we're evolving into something fun. That's a free offering that we'll be gifting to our community. And then at the very, very end of the year, Thursday, the very last Thursday of the year, we're going to have a creation story event where we will do that, circling around the virtual hearth and listening to stories about the creation of the world, which was Daniel's favorite thing to do at year end. He kept that tradition going for about 10 or more years to have the last story night of the year be all about creation as we move into 2023. And next year, there'll be a variety of new things as well as other things, along with the audiobook coming out. There will be other kinds of longer workshops for a deeper dive. I'm planning to teach a course in the book. People have been asking for a book group. If you have things that you really want, anybody who's listening to this at any point, do put it in the chat and you can catch up with us that way. And if you don't yet have the book, you can go to innertraditions.com/the-other-within to get directly there, or go to your favorite book seller. And I have another question that I'm seeing here, which is, can I talk more about shape-shifting and how this can apply to the performing arts, dance, theater, music? Well, shape-shifting is a huge topic that is, from my own personal experience, more what I have experienced in dream states and what I have read and heard other people speaking about from a shamanic perspective as far as truly shape shifting. There's a quite stirring uh, chapter about shape shifting that I highly recommend in David Abrams' book, Becoming Animal. And there's the idea that in the stories, we have different figures that shapeshift. So, like, for instance, the woman who became a fox. And this is something that the woman herself doesn't realize is happening to her while it's happening. So, that essence of being changed by one circumstance is something that we might all relate to, whether we've actually physically shapeshifted or not, in a tangible outward way. I think we're constantly experiencing the possibilities of shape shifting and shifting identities inside. How does that relate to dance, theater, and music? Like, I would say that I'm going to turn my camera here so you can see this portrait that I just finished, which was part of a year-long course in using art from the inside out while practicing the somatics life art process with Tamalpa Institute. And those creatures that came out of myself and others, but I'll just speak for myself, like working with the face and the idea of masking and unmasking and then drawing, like what comes out. I'm not an artist that thinks of myself as a drawer or a painter, but I'm somebody who is willing to take color on paper and create a shape that feels like it's coming from the outside. As I do that, just the gesture of the experience is connected to me with dance. It's the gesture of moving, it's the impulse to express that might be part of what drives us in performance. And I'm very, very interested in the person that asked that question to hear your thoughts now or later um, about that as well. Any last questions before I sign off for tonight? I want to celebrate with gratitude the different people who have supported our work this year. I want to thank Frederick Madison for introducing myself to many different people. to Audrey DeMola for coming into the work of the Mythsinger Legacy Project, for Shauna Hett helping us get started early on, for Ashley A. Friend joining us in the spring and again in the fall, for the Jubilation Foundation, which has supported songwriting works, Educational Foundation, the nonprofit that I started some years ago, to use the oral tradition in music to bring community together by creating original songs, and Daniel giving me the great blessing of saying that looks like the oral tradition at its inception to him. Like, how did these stories get started? Well, maybe the way the songs get started, in circle when we're just together. And so Songwriting Works Educational Foundation agreed to take story into our mission, which is now restoring joy, hope, vitality, and community through story and song and story, so that we could honor Daniel's work. He was so much a part of the organization as a guest artist, as a music producer, and as a board member. And to then have, we're the fiscal umbrella for the Mythsinger Legacy Project. So we do welcome anyone who wants to support financially. Donations can always be made at our website through our donations page, which is at Mighty Cause, which I believe Ashley can put that into the chat, if I'm not mistaken. And you can also find all of this information on our website, mythsingerlegacy.org. And my own website, which will continue to evolve, alivenessthrougharts.net, or otherwise judith-kate.com, will bring you to the same place, has portals on it where you can click on all of these things. You can click on Mythsinger, the Unstoppable Stirring Environmental Project, the other projects I'm involved with, Songwriting Works, and as well as the dissertation project, Mandorla Rising. And yeah, so many strands. So I want to thank Dr. Martin Shaw for writing the afterword to this book. I want to thank Robert Simmons for writing the foreword and introducing us to inner traditions, and for John Graham and Ashley Kolesnik and Mahar Sperling and Amelia Cataldo and all of the other people who have been part of making this edition what it is and now out in the world. It's so exciting. For all of you who have contributed, for the Human Family Unity Foundation and the Darien Foundation for supporting our work throughout the year, and hopefully for all of you celebrating with us at our party coming up and otherwise in our various events. Please do put your thoughts into the chat. Visit us at mythsingerlegacy.org, sign up on our website, subscribe to our stream, find us on Instagram, find us on Facebook. Mythsinger Legacy will get you there. And I look forward to getting to know you if we don't already, and to getting to jam some more. I see that April wrote, no questions, just love listening. Thanks, just love knowing that you're out there. Is it possible for a human not to perform when in groups? That question we're going to have to sleep on through the winter and wake up in the spring and have an answer for. Is performance part of a state of being with each other? Well, there's that whole question about what is performance? Is performance only when we step out onto a stage? Is a performance something that we're in a persona of? Or do we do the performance of identity, as Richard Schechner taught about and Daniel talks about a lot in the book? Do we perform our identities all the time for each other? I'll leave that question to you, and hopefully you'll be able to check out the book and ponder some answers for yourself. I think my computer is telling us we have reached the end. Thank you so much for stopping by and for sharing your words with us as well. Take good care.